6.1 Radical Expressions and Functions. Square roots. The square of 5 is 25. So 5 squared is 25. So the square root of 25 is 5. The square root of 25 is 5. The number b is the square root of a if b squared equals a. b equals the square root of a if b squared equals a. Negative 5 is also the square root of 25 because negative 5, the quantity negative 5 squared equals 25. So let's find the square roots of 64 and 49. So we're looking to find the number that when you multiply it by itself, you get 64. The square root of 64 is 8. It can be a positive 8 or a negative 8. So we'll put plus or minus to show that it can be positive or negative. What about the square root of 49? What number do you multiply by itself to get 49? A positive or a negative 7. So we let the square root of a denote the positive or principal square root of a. Negative square root of a denotes the negative square root of a. So if it doesn't specify to take the negative square root, we assume that we need to take the positive square root. So the square root of 64 is a positive 8. Negative square root of 49, negative 7. Square root of 100, 10. The square root of 4, 25ths. What number multiplied times itself equals 4 25ths? How about 2/5? 2/5 times 2/5 is 4 25ths. That works. And the square root of 0 is 0. The symbol square root is called a radical. An expression written with a radical is called a... Oh, this is so complicated. You're never going to get it. It's called a radical expression. That is so hard. And an expression under the radical sign, what you are taking the square root of is called the radicand. Radicand. So we are given these radical expressions, and we are asked what are the corresponding radicands. What are you taking the square root of? 7 is the radicand. X is the radicand. Y squared plus 5 is the radicand. It is what you're taking the square root of. We're going to use a calculator to approximate to the nearest thousandth. So in terms of decimal places, you have tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So we need 3 decimal places. So let's use our calculators and find the square root of 10. It is approximately 3.162. The digit after that is the number 2, so we leave it as 2. 5 radical 7. So we want the square root of 7 times 5. That is approximately 13.22. Now, the next number is an 8, but the number after that is a 7. So we need to round that to 9. 301 divided by 620. Take the square root of that. It is approximately 6, 9. 6 is the next digit, but the digit after that is 7. So we want to round that to 7. Make sure you round appropriately. Is y equals the square root of x a function? Each real number x has one and only one principal square root. So every x has one and only one y associated with it. It is a function. What is the domain? What can we take the square root of? Can we take the square root of fractions? Yeah, we just did. Can we take the square root of positive numbers? Sure. How about negative numbers? Can you take the square root of a negative number? No. So our domain will be all x such that x is greater than, could be equal to, 0. That's our domain. So let's find the indicated function values here. We want to know what is f of 3. So it's like fill in the blank. We want to take the square root of 4 times 3 plus 4. We have to perform the multiplication and addition before we take the square root. 4 times 3 is 12 plus 4, 16. What is the principal square root of 16? 4. How about f of negative 1? This time we're going to substitute negative 1 into our equation. So it is the square root of 4 times negative 1 plus 4. That's negative 4 plus 4. That's the square root of 0. And the square root of 0 is 0. Notice we were able to substitute a negative value in place of x there, and we just talked about in the function above, the square root of x, that x had to be greater than or equal to 0. Really what we're saying is whatever you're taking the square root of has to be greater than or equal to 0. And in this case, what we're taking the square root of is 4x plus 4. So it has to be greater than or equal to 0. That means 4x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Divide both sides by 4. And we get x is greater than or equal to negative 1. That's our domain. Let's talk about finding the square root of a squared. So we're first going to consider the square root of 5 squared. Well, 5 squared is 25, so that's the square root of 25. We're supposed to take the square root of that, positive 5. That doesn't tell us much. What about the square root of negative 6 quantity squared? So, we're squaring negative 6, we're multiplying negative 6 times negative 6. That will give us a positive 36. And when we take the square root of 36, we get 6, because we have to take the principal square root, the positive one. What about the square root of negative 10 squared? The square root of 100 gives us 10. So let's look at these. When we had the square root of 5 squared, we just got 5. But when we had the square root of negative 6 squared, we got positive 6. Negative 10 squared, we got positive 10. So the principal square root of a squared, for any real number a, the principal square root of a squared is the absolute value of a. Notice we put 5 in, we got 5. We put negative 6 in, we got 6. That's like taking the absolute value. We always get positive numbers out of these. So we're going to be using absolute value. Find each of the following. Assume that letters or variables can represent any real number. So the square root of negative 18 squared. Well, whatever negative 18 squared is, you're going to square it, you'll get a positive number. Then you'll take the square root, which will give you 18. It's the absolute value of negative 18. Notice I didn't even calculate what 18 squared is. I don't care. Don't need it. Square root of the quantity 15b squared. Well, when you're squaring a product, you know it's 15 squared and it's b squared. So the square root of 15 squared will be 15, and the square root of b squared, that's where we need that absolute value to force it to be positive. Well, this doesn't look like you could take the square root of it, but you need to factor it. It's a special product. How can you factor it? X minus 3 squared. So we want the square root of x minus 3 squared. That gives us just the x minus 3, and don't forget the absolute value. Cube roots. The number b is the cube root of a if b cubed equals a. So b equals the cubed root of a is the way we designate cubed roots with that little 3 there. If b cubed equals a, the cube of 2, so 2 cubed is 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2, it's 8. Therefore, the cubed root of 8 is 2. Every real number has one and only one cube root in the real number system. Every number has a cubed root. Doesn't matter whether it's positive, negative, it doesn't matter. So the cubed root of 27. Think about a cubed root. We're looking for a number that you would write down 3 times and you would get 27. Well, 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Therefore, the cubed root of 27 is the number 3. 64. We're looking for a number that you can write down 3 times and multiply, and you will get 64. What is that number? 4. So the cubed root of 64 is 4. 1/8. We're looking for a fraction that you can write down 3 times, multiply together, and you get 1/8. 1/2. You don't have to take this step. I'm just doing it to emphasize what the cubed root means. Cubed root of -1. You're looking for a number that you write down 3 times and multiply, and you get -1. It's got to be negative 1. So the cubed root of a negative number does exist, and in fact, it is negative. Nth root. The number b is the nth root of a if b raised to the nth power equals a. b equals the nth root of a if b to the n equals a. N is called the index. So this is fourth root. One way to think of it is you're looking for a number. It's fourth root, so you're looking for a number that you write down 4 times, you multiply, and you get 81. 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is 81. So 3 is the fourth root of 81. The fifth root of 32, what number can you write down 5 times and you get 32? The number 2. What about the cubed root of negative 125? The cubed root of a negative number is negative, so I know it's negative. What number do I write down 3 times, multiply, and I get 125? Negative 5 is the fifth root. What about the fourth root of negative 16? So we're looking for a number that you write down 4 times, you multiply, and you get negative 16? I have a problem with that. Because if the number I write down is negative, and I write down 4 of them, I get a positive number. If the number I write down is positive, I'm not going to get a negative 16. This problem has no solution. The fourth root of negative 16, we just can't do it. For any number, real number a, the kth root of a to the k equals the absolute value of a when k is an even natural number. So if you're taking an even root of something raised to that even power, you have to have the absolute value as a part of your answer. We use absolute value when k is even unless a is non-negative. If we're guaranteed that a has to be positive, we don't have to worry about that. So the kth root of a to the k equals a when k is an odd natural number greater than 1. So we do not use absolute value when k is odd. Odd roots, don't worry about k or the absolute value. Even roots, worry about it. So we have the 9th root of x to the 9th. That's an odd root. Taking the root will cancel out the raised to the 9th power. So the answer is just x. What about the 8th root of x to the 8th? Even roots have to have absolute value. 4th root of 81 x to the 4th. Well, what's the 4th root of 81? What number do you multiply together? Write 4 of them down, multiply together, and you get 81. 3. What about the 4th root of x to the 4th? It's an even root. Absolute value of x. That's all for section 6.1.